what is something, it's 7 months, what's something that you just have learned in the last 7 months? What is something that's just, you didn't know before you went public?
Oh my goodness. Well, I can tell you, I know I'm going to regret these words. My goodness, I can hear it.
No, you should say them then.
I've really enjoyed being public. I think being public has been much more pleasant than going public. It took us 2 years to get out. We thought we were going to go out in April 2022. And so that was a journey. So I think just being out and being able to work and think about the product and think about the team, that has been honestly a relief.
And so reaction from the market was good? Better than expected? What you expected?
It's certainly what we hoped for. We're up quite a lot, and the goal at the IPO was, one of the reasons to go public at all is we wanted our users to have an opportunity to be owners of Reddit. Reddit is people. Everything interesting about Reddit was and is and will be created by our users, and so we wanted them to have an opportunity to not just have that sense of ownership, but to be actual owners. But the thing about going public is, and having our users and retail more broadly participate in the IPO, you really want the price to go up. So I think in that regard, it worked out really well. And so we're very, I think, thankful and fortunate for how that's gone so far.
Good. I want to come back to talking about your users, but I want to talk about 3 different topics today. They all start with A. We're going to talk about answers, AI, and ambitions.
Great.
And I'm going to start on answers because how many people here use Reddit? Okay. How many people use Google? Okay. How many people use Google to get to Reddit? Okay. So I use Reddit directly. I use Google to get to Reddit. And I just find that more and more I'm relying on Reddit for search, for getting information.
So your experience is, as the hands showed, not unique. Here's a kind of a wild stat that I learned just a couple weeks ago. In the United States in 2024, Reddit is the 6th most searched word on Google. We're somewhere between news and maps. And so people are going to Google with the intention of ending up on Reddit. And I think what's happening is, people know that Reddit has answers, advice, perspective on just about whatever you're looking for. So at this point, it does feel like we're married to Google. But at the end of the day, we're seeing more and more people learn that Reddit has just pretty much everything that you're looking for.
Yeah, we can get in, maybe it's like a little bit of a prenup there we can talk about in a little bit. But in terms of, people are calling this new wave sort of search 3.0, right? The idea of sort of melding of social and search. Why do you think it is that Reddit has sort of seen this explosion in people coming for information?
I think Reddit is communities and conversation. And we have communities for literally anything that you're into or going through. And so a lot of internet searchers, a significant portion of just general searches on the internet are questions. And so if you have questions, there's just a high likelihood that Reddit, where people have been talking about everything for almost 2 decades, has an answer or perspectives on whatever it is. And one of the interesting things that I've both kind of experienced as a user, but also as somebody working on Reddit, is we've seen how Reddit evolves with people's lives. And so, what I was into 20 years ago, let's call it programming and video games, it's still on Reddit, but now what I interact with on Reddit is like parenting and San Francisco. Yep. And so Reddit's just really, really broad. And the way we describe it is basically Reddit, whether you're 17 or 70 or a nerd or normie, man, woman, or anything in between, Reddit has a home for you. And I think that's unique on the internet. It's something that has that sort of broad appeal.
You've said before that Reddit is the most human place on the internet. That was your own quote. AI has come along now, and I'll ask actually again, I'm just going to keep asking audience questions and having everyone raise their hands. Who's heard of AI slop? Okay. Well, AI slop is this idea that basically we're going to be invaded by all of this, I don't know, I would really want to say crap, just AI crap, and we're going to kind of be washed away in this text that is not really human. And part of that's a fear that will happen on Google, right? That we'll have all of these AI search results. But if Reddit is the most human place on earth, are you fearful that some of this AI slop might make its way to your platform?
Well, the AI has to come from somewhere. And so the source of artificial intelligence is actual intelligence. And that's what you find on Reddit. And indeed, the Reddit corpus is a significant part of the training of the major foundation models. Again, that's because there's colloquial words about pretty much every topic, constantly up to date. But I think your observation is true, which is it does seem like there's a general lowering of quality on the internet because more and more content is written by AI, which the paradox there is that I think it actually makes Reddit stand out more as the place where there's all of this human content that ends up being used to train AI. And so there's, I think, an interesting connection there. But what people want is to hear from other people. And they want not just the answers and information from other people, but also that sense of belonging and connection and community that Reddit provides.
So do you think of yourself as the owner of the world's best AI training data?
We're certainly up there. It is a valuable corpus. And I think one of the things that's unique about Reddit versus the other social media platforms is Reddit's open. And we've always been open. So you don't need an account. You don't need to pay to see the content on Reddit. If you put something on Reddit, it's public. It can be indexed in search engines, which has, I think, benefited our community and internet consumers at large. It's helped these big AI models come to exist. Now, we've had to make some decisions about that and figure out our place in this ecosystem. Earlier this year, we created what we call a public content policy, which sits alongside our privacy policy, which basically every platform has a privacy policy. This is what you'll do with personal and private information. For Reddit, it's very simple. It never leaves Reddit, to the extent that we have any at all. But our public content policy governs what happens to the public content that you put on Reddit.
So just to differentiate, private would be my direct messages to you or something.
Direct messages, what you're subscribed to, what you're looking at on Reddit, that's private. Now on Reddit's also unique in that we actually don't know your name. We don't know your name and gender. We do have to ask age now for increasingly for safety reasons. But by and large, we try to minimize what we know about you. And what we do have, we keep private. But anything you write on the internet, we want to be clear that this goes on the public internet. And what can happen with that data, which is, we'll say we'll do commercial agreements subject to some important guardrails about, for example, not using that data to identify our users. And we've done non-commercial agreements with nonprofits and researchers and that sort of thing as well, because we know that information is useful to all sorts of entities, big and small, for-profit and not.
Right. And for the audience, and I want to get into this, but you do have deals right now, OpenAI, Google. They're paying you for training data, and they bring that in, and that's, I assume, a healthy profit in the business.
Yeah, so we do have partnerships, yes, with both Google and OpenAI. We've also done free ones with places like the Internet Archive. Okay. We have this whole initiative called Reddit for Research as well, to make our corpus available for people doing research, whether it's on the internet, whether it's on social dynamics or AI. Again, we think generally the internet is better when it's open and interconnected. But we also need to make sure that we're finding a way, we're not just giving away the value of Reddit to the largest companies in the world for free.
Are there companies that you feel are taking that data and not paying?
Yeah, the ones I didn't mention by and large.
There's like a Microsoft in there. It's one of them, I'm assuming.
Look, we're in talks with just about everybody. I'd say each are at various stages. So, we'll see where these things land. But like I said, I think it's better for the internet to be more connected. And that really is Reddit's heritage, is being open and being in there. And so we just want to make sure we're doing so on terms that are, I think, sustainable for our platform.
And then just to bring it back to users, I mean, what do you say to the users who say, okay, I put this public information out there, now I'm being used as training data. How can I profit off of that?
So again, I think it's important to be clear with our user base. That's why we did the public content policy, that even without the AI world that we're living in, you're putting something on the public internet. We will do our best to safeguard it. We will do our best to only have relationships with partners that we think are trustworthy and will abide by our principles. But we've been getting scraped every which way. And so we've invested a lot over the last couple of years in locking that down, but it is an arms race. And so, again, this is, I think, just important to understand about Reddit, is this is the public internet. But again, we also try to protect our users by not requiring private information, right? I think it's an important part of Reddit that you don't bring your real-world baggage to Reddit or take your Reddit reputation off of the platform. And in this regard, Reddit's an anonymous platform. Anonymity is safety, which I think is a misconception. People often wonder, oh, Reddit's anonymous, isn't that less safe? It's actually more safe because people are free to be themselves and don't have to kind of deal with that kind of real-world mixing.
One of the things that I think that has made Reddit so successful over the last couple of years is that you really cleaned up the place. You're basically the cleanup guy, right? You made more communities around substantial topics, got rid of a lot of misinformation or trolling or just bad
General
behavior.
bad behavior, yeah.
Bad stuff. You've got an election going on, and wanted to see, have you found that in this election process that it's been harder to keep some of that type of content off of the platform?
No, look, we've been through a number of big presidential elections. We've been around 19 years, so this is not our first rodeo by any means. Look, emotions are heightened for sure, but Reddit is, I think, naturally inoculated from a lot of the challenges you might see elsewhere on the internet. First, our users self-organize into communities that we call subreddits. So kind of whatever your perspective is, whether it's in this election or anything else, whoever your people are, you can kind of hang with them. And then on Reddit, every user is a moderator because they can vote up and down. And every post and comment on Reddit starts at 0 points and has to earn its visibility. We don't have an algorithm that cherry picks a piece of content and makes it popular. It has to earn its visibility, one vote at a time, up or down. And so naturally, polarizing posts can get the same number of ups and downs and then therefore stay at 0. And so Reddit just works in a fundamentally different way from other platforms. And that really, I think, changes the tone of conversation and the incentives.
It seems quite different than X and what's happening on that platform right now. Have you seen any benefit to, your business? Have you seen any benefit to what Elon Musk has done on that platform?
It's hard to pinpoint Reddit's growth to any one thing, not just any one thing with other platforms, but any one thing. I think this has been one of the interesting things about Reddit is we have a 2-decade perspective. And so if you looked at our traffic graph over the last 19 years, you would not see world events. It's actually been very consistent. Now, on Reddit, there's always some subreddit, some community that's having a moment. But when you look at them in aggregate, Reddit's just been very consistent. And so our work over the last couple of years, we're at all-time user highs last quarter. We've been growing really nicely the last couple of years. What's driving that is not macro trends. It's really we just made Reddit easier to use. I used to do, I'd do a talk like this, and maybe I'd give the pitch of my life about Reddit, and then somebody would go check Reddit for the first time, and they'd open it, and they'd be like, what is that guy talking about?
Right.
This is just like memes,
Yep.
you know, teenager stuff. We've gotten much better at helping new users, when they open the app or visit the website for the first time, be successful in finding their home. And that's really what's driving the growth over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and the White House just kind of brought back their Reddit page a few weeks or months ago, I believe, and they're active there. So it seems like also it's more of these legitimate organizations and politicians or celebrities or whatnot also being active on the platform.
Yeah, so I mean, in this case, the White House created an account to disseminate information about the hurricane.
Yep.
And in their words, I believe they said, we want to meet people where they are. And so I think this is really fascinating. They've been in, by and large, small local communities where they can talk to people who are having very specific issues. And then politics more broadly, we have a thing on Reddit called the AMA, the Ask Me Anything. And this is really a product built by our users for doing interviews on Reddit. And it's one of the most humanizing things someone can do. And so whether you're a politician, you know, we've had some big ones over the years, or one of our most popular AMAs ever, a vacuum cleaner salesman, it shows, I think, a side of people, and Reddit more broadly, I think, shows a side of humanity that we don't always get to see. And I think that's what's really special about Reddit versus a lot of the rest of the internet.
It's funny because this is one of the posts on the White House page, and you're totally right. There's a lot of great posts there about what they were doing about relief. But my favorite thing is if you scroll down on this page, they're all saying that this just looks like a Getty stock image, and it's like it truly is. And so it gets to the heart of what's, I think, really the community of Reddit.
That's true. I mean, look, if you're going to post a Getty stock image, you're also going to get called out on it.
Yeah. I mean, or if it looks like one. I believe that really is the president. And
it's hard to say. It's a little far away, but I can tell you.
Yes.
Reddit has been, I think, the world's best bullshit detector since its inception. And I think it's one of the things that people really appreciate about Reddit is that it is authentic. It's not always squeaky clean. It's not always perfect. It's not manicured, but it's real. And that's what I think people crave. And again, that's another thing I think driving the growth that we've seen over the last couple of years is people want real. They want to know what other people say and think. And that's really not just part of Reddit. It's really all of Reddit.
I'm going to go to audience questions here in a few seconds, but you have talked a lot about the open internet. And as you mentioned here, Reddit is many, many years old now. And if you look far out, what is your biggest fear about either AI or this next wave of the internet? What is your fear?
You know, I think, have a kind of a fear-based lens of the world. I'm actually just very excited. I've had the true privilege of working on Reddit and seeing every day how people behave when nobody's watching. And they are funnier and nicer and more supportive and kinder than I think we give the general population credit for. And I know this because I see people every single day just helping each other. On Reddit, you can spend one of a subreddit that's been really important to me over the years is stop drinking. I quit drinking 5 years ago. You can go to that subreddit today, and I guarantee on the front page, you'll see somebody celebrating a milestone, maybe 100 days, maybe a year, maybe 5 years. You'll see somebody thinking about drinking again, and you'll see everybody pulling them back, and you'll see somebody who literally just had the worst day of their life and is posting about it. And there will be hundreds of people telling that person that they have a new lease on life as soon as they decide to take it, and they're giving that advice for no other reason than it feels good to do so, or that they want to be helpful, because you don't get to take it with you. And I think that's what's really special. And seeing people do that makes me actually very excited about the future and whatever small role that we can play in it.
Sounds like to me like the total antithesis of AI slop. So I'm also optimistic when I hear you talk about that. We have time for probably one or two questions. Any questions out there? While we find someone, what is your favorite subreddit? We're going to go over there.
Favorite subreddit right now is probably Daddit.
Okay.
Subreddit, it's as the name implies, it's a subreddit for dads. And again, that subreddit is like a lot of these subreddits. If you go to the front page, you'll probably see something funny. You'll probably see something that'll make you cry. You'll probably see somebody who just needs some help. Or you'll probably see some poor guy who just needs a hug. But that's, I think, it's the real of the world there for everybody to see and experience. It's really special.
We'll go over here.
Hi, my name's Lottie Jones. I'm from the News Movement. We do social first news for Gen Z. And actually, it's not really a question, but I'd just love to hear you talk around how, as more journalists and news sources are defecting from X, how you're working with news media, particularly around issues like tackling misinformation. And then I suppose in a bit more of a positive place, how news and journalists as individuals can build stronger and better communities around their own desks and notions of expertise.
It's a great question. I think, well, look, so Reddit's heritage has been in links. When we started Reddit in 2005, Reddit was only links. So we only linked to external sources. A lot of the rest of social media, they don't link anymore, right? They try to keep people in. And that's never been our aim. And so a lot of Reddit is still links. What we want to be is the conversation around whether it's news or anything else. And so I think we've long had a relationship, an informal relationship with publishers, because we send them a lot of traffic and we're the place that people talk about these things. What I'd love to see is, I think, how we can better support that community. I think creating, as we look forward, kind of first-class features for publishers, better ways for the authors, the writers, the creators themselves to be more present on Reddit, just talking about, like, in the mix, talking about their stuff. And so I think there's a lot of opportunities there for sure. I'd say today, from a feature point of view, it's okay. But I just think there's a lot of things we can do there. Again, in the spirit of the web, right? Just enriching the connections, enriching the experiences for both the creators and our users who are the talkers.
I'm going to go one more here.
Hello. My name's Nariana Maiko, and I can attest, I like how optimistic you are. Some of the realest conversations I've ever seen, I go down some rabbit hole. It's amazing, it's real. So I have a question. Since a lot of the AI, many major companies are using this information that you've collected over the 19 years to train them over time, because it's such a vast amount of data, they will be so well trained that you mentioned, you get an upvote or a downvote. They'll be trained how to imitate a human, let's say, and somebody put out 1 million downvotes or upvotes that the regular humans. How do you stop that type of interference that might in the future result from the information that the models may have learned of how to be more human and preventing those who may not want to use it properly?
Okay, so thanks for the question. You touched on a couple of things there. So yes, the conversation and the words on Reddit are used to train these models, which I actually think is important, helping these models be better. And these models are creating an incredible amount of value for humanity. Obviously, there are risks there that I think the greater community is working through. What you mentioned, though, is voting. And so we call that coordinated inauthentic behavior. And or cheating would be the one-word description of it. And we've been fighting cheating or manipulation on Reddit for 19 years. Long before AI, people have been trying to get to the front page of Reddit for whatever reason. And so that is in particular what we look out for, is groups of people trying to make something more popular than it would otherwise be. It is an arms race. We're constantly learning and evolving there. But the good news is we can see everything. And so it's hard to manipulate Reddit, I think, at scale, but it's something we take very, very seriously. It's the most, I think, important part about Reddit, because that's what lets Reddit be real and authentic as opposed to manipulated.